Brad Stevens and the Boston Celtics have a lot on their plate this offseason, but this new report is very interesting as it leads the Celtics to be interested in a player across overseas who has been someone they've been keeping an eye on for a long time. And with the Celtics dealing with second apron restrictions, bringing in this talented European wing could do big things for Joe Mazzulla and this Boston Celtics team as they look to rebuild this squad with being in the second apron. So we're going to dive in and look at this report, looking at said player and seeing if he'd be a good fit for this Boston Celtics squad and if they should pursue him this offseason. We'll be diving into all of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I am Bruce Veliz, and you guys have been fantastic showing your love for Patrick and I on these videos over these last couple of days, and we really do appreciate all the support you guys have been showing us down below in the comment section and letting us know your thoughts on some draft picks and obviously some people interested in the Boston Celtics. We do know that obviously today's video is going to be a fantastic one, so let us know your thoughts down below and let's get into it. Without further ado, grab that snack and let's talk about this Celtics team, as ultimately I do think this is very interesting for the Celtics to be interested in a player from overseas, as we'll get into it a little bit. But there was a player last season who was playing overseas that really stood out in the Olympics and got a fair run in the NBA this season. So the Celtics once again could be looking to replicate that on their margins when targeting a guy in Nigel Hayes-Davis, as Joe Mazzulla reportedly was in Turkey to scout Nigel Hayes-Davis, and Chris Forsberg details why the Celtics for a near decade have had interest in this EuroLeague star. Now, we want to dive in and we're like, Nigel Hayes-Davis kind of reminds me of someone. Where did he play? Well, I vividly remember him on March 18th in 2017 when I was 16 years old. I have a vivid memory of him leading Wisconsin to an upset over the number one seeded team in the tournament in Villanova. Hayes-Davis was the leading scorer for the team that day and was an intriguing piece back then to my young eye, and still is, following some impressive seasons overseas. So let's dive in and let's look what he can bring to for this Celtics team. Like I mentioned, his name does sound familiar because he did play in the college basketball scene over at Wisconsin for a couple of seasons before going undrafted. But our brain immediately started churning Monday when a report from Eurohoops noted that the Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla was spotted at the Turkey League Finals, seemingly to watch Hayes-Davis compete for Fenerbahce. A quick check of quick notes detailed a nearly full decade of interest between Hayes-Davis and the Celtics, and while the Boston Celtics most certainly have bigger roster issues to navigate this summer, it's fair to wonder in these late June doldrums if this now year 30-year-old Hayes-Davis could be a low-cost option for Boston's front court. Mazzulla, no stranger to off-season international travel, likely has more reasons to check out a high-stake EuroLeague match beyond Hayes-Davis, but it also highlights how the team is searching all the outcomes for the globe of talent. And if we want to keep diving in and looking at what Hayes-Davis can bring for the Boston Celtics, we can get into that a little bit, but he does have some history with this Celtics team that is noted. The Celtics first hosted him on a draft workout in 2016, where he was one of the 12 players who participated in a split group out workout. Others that visited those sessions were players like Malcolm Brogdon, who was on the Boston Celtics, Josh Hart, who's been in the NBA, DeAndre Bembry, who was an old first-round pick, Taurean Prince, who's roaming around the league, Jake Layman, who had some time with the Memphis Grizzlies, and even Abdel Nader, a guy who was the main Celtics MVP one season, similar like J.D. Davidson, who the Celtics ultimately took in 58th in the 2016 draft. Hayes-Davis unfortunately withdrew from the 2016 draft to return to Wisconsin for his senior year, and then he went undrafted in 2017. His pro journey actually started with the Westchester Knicks in the G League, following where he was teammates with Luke Cornett, where the 6'8" wing appeared in 9 NBA games with 3 teams, the Lakers, Raptors, and Kings, during that 2017-2018 season, before taking his game overseas after his rookie year. Now, in 2021, reports suggested that there were interest once again between the Celtics and Hayes-Davis, but nothing ever materialized. 9 years after the draft workouts in Waltham, could Hayes-Davis be a depth option if he wanted to crack out on the NBA and the Celtics needed low-cost depth options at the wing? Obviously, I think so. Hayes-Davis landed an all-EuroLeague first team this season. One of the other American members on that squad was former Celtics draftee Carson Edwards, who was drafted in the 33rd overall pick in 2019. Hayes-Davis averaged 16.7 points per game this season while shooting almost 50% from the floor and 41% from three-point range in 39 EuroLeague games this season. Fenerbahce general manager Dario Yannier told reporters last month that there was serious interest from the NBA for Hayes-Davis and teammates Tariq Beverock, and suggested that teams wouldn't stand in their way if they elected to pursue these opportunities. And that is key to here. Once again, like we hear with some of these Euro clubs, obviously they do start the season a little bit later than the NBA, so it's tougher for them to kind of transition. But during that offseason point, if players want to go over the NBA, that could be key. And a guy like Nigel Hayes-Davis could be one of those guys. Like I mentioned, played at Wisconsin for 4 seasons, where he was a fantastic athlete. Once again, in my opinion, he should have went in the draft in 2016, as I do believe he would have been a, potential second rounder, maybe even late first rounder out in those marks. But a guy like Nigel Hayes-Davis has not only proved himself in college, but also overseas that he can be an impactful player. And for the Celtics, once again, a team dealing with some second apron restrictions, as we all know, where they have to shed salaries like Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porziņģis, and even potentially Sam Hauser. A guy like Nigel Hayes-Davis who could come in on a cheap contract, relative closely to the minimum, or maybe even a little bit above the minimum, could help out the Boston Celtics, and once again identifying a key role that they need: another 6'8" wing who can be a solid defensive stopper but also wing scorer for this league. Chris Forsberg detailed once again that last season he averaged 16.7 points while shooting 50% from the floor and 41% from three-point range in 39 EuroLeague games last season. And I know, obviously, going from EuroLeague basketball to the NBA is a little bit of an adjustment, but we did see it happen last season with a guy in Guerschon Yabusele, a former Boston Celtics first-round pick, who really shocked a lot of people in the Olympics with his run with France and was able to get a contract with the Philadelphia 76ers last season. I do think we will see some guys that have fallen out of the league or even playing over in Euro basketball get this kind of treatment similar to Yabusele, as Yabusele had a fantastic rookie season with these Philadelphia 76ers and is one of the most intriguing names on the market here for free agency at that power forward position, as he still is around 27, 28 years old and can still provide you a solid impact as a key role player and stretch four. And I feel like a guy in Nigel Hayes-Davis could also do that potentially for the Boston Celtics if they were able to present him and draft and sign him over to a contract this offseason. Once again, when looking at this wing group, we've mentioned that with Jayson Tatum being out, the Celtics do need a player to kind of fill in and play in that wing position. And obviously, bringing a guy like Nigel Hayes-Davis isn't going to completely replicate that, but it's going to add some more depth to that wing position that the Celtics very lack clearly when looking at this roster. We also know Torrey Craig is a key free agent for the Boston Celtics, and he did return to the Celtics yesterday to kind of see Jayson Tatum in his rehab, so that might be leaning to Torrey Craig potentially even returning to the Boston Celtics. But if they lose him, or if they feel that Jordan Walsh isn't ready to take that next step, even though I feel like he is, a guy like Nigel Hayes-Davis could once again be brought into that room and kind of compete. I think he'd be very similar to a guy like O'Shea Brissett, or even a guy like Lamar Stevens when they signed with the Boston Celtics 2 off seasons ago, who had that intrigue of potentially being that 3-and-D, potentially even power forward wing, that defensive stopper, but also with Nigel Hayes-Davis having those pretty solid three-point shooting numbers as well, gives you the comfortability that he could stretch out and hit those threes in a Joe Mazzulla offensive run system, to where he could be, potentially a fringe forward player at the start, but ultimately could turn himself into a rotational piece for the Boston Celtics at this wing position, specifically when they desperately need it most, with Jayson Tatum dealing with injuries, and potentially having, some middling wings on in this roster alongside Jaylen Brown to really compensate that only one season that Jayson Tatum is out. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What are your thoughts on Nigel Hayes-Davis, and would you guys be interested in seeing him on the Boston Celtics? Personally, like I said, I've been intrigued with him since college, and with the Celtics being linked to him for almost a decade, diving back to the draft, and even in 2021 when he had some run over in the Euro Basketball League overseas, the Boston Celtics have been keeping an eye on this guy, and even if Joe Mazzulla went to go just see a cool game over in Turkey, he definitely had some keen notes that he took on Nigel Hayes-Davis that he's bringing back to Boston to really do some intel to see if this is the right time for the Celtics to strike to bring over this European wing in over to the Celtics rotation. So once again, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, what you guys ultimately think. I think he'd be a good solid fit with the Celtics trying to find these filler replacement wings. Might as well strike a deal with Nigel Hayes-Davis on a 1 or 2 year cheap deal to kind of give him that ability to grow into that player, and if he doesn't, obviously has the flexibility to find himself the following season. But once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next video, and have a great rest of your day. Go Boston Celtics, and peace out.